There is a lie that women have been living for decades, and this lie is sabotaging their love lives in ways they can't even imagine. For years I've heard the same question repeated in countless ways during therapy sessions. What do men really want? And every time I hear this question, I feel a mix of compassion and frustration, because the question itself reveals the deeper issue. The truth is that women have learned to ask themselves what men want, when in reality they should be asking, who am I really? They've been taught to shape their personalities based on what they think is attractive, when what truly captivates a mature man is exactly the opposite, a woman who refuses to mold herself for anyone. In over 3 decades of guiding people through therapy, I've witnessed a fascinating transformation. I've seen women who came to me exhausted from trying to decode men turn into natural magnets of genuine attraction the moment they decided to stop trying. And it wasn't magic, it was applied neuroscience. The male brain, especially after the age of 35, develops very sophisticated authenticity detectors. It has experienced enough shallow encounters, performances, and emotional masks to develop an almost instinctive sensitivity to what is real. When a mature man encounters an authentic woman, something deep and visceral is triggered in his limbic system. This reaction isn't random, it corresponds to very specific neurological patterns related to emotional safety and relational stability. A man who has been through complex relationships seeks signs of emotional reliability, and authenticity is the most powerful signal there is. But authenticity isn't just about being natural. The kind of authenticity that creates true psychological excitement has very specific components. Most women aren't even aware of them. The first of these components is what I have observed in hundreds of successful cases: emotional presence without the need for external validation. Imagine a woman who can hold a deep conversation without the anxiety of needing to be liked. Who can express a contrary opinion without fearing rejection? Who can sit in silence without feeling the need to fill it with empty words? This kind of emotional solidity triggers a response in the male brain that I call active relaxation. He relaxes because he senses emotional safety, but he's also activated because what is rare becomes magnetic in a world full of superficial interactions. Over the years, I've noticed an interesting pattern in couples who come to therapy. Men describe their most successful partners using words like calm, grounded, and real. They never use terms like perfect, or impressive, wild, or spectacular. Male psychological arousal is fueled by substance, not by spectacle. This brings us to the second key component I've identified, what I call unmasked joy. I'm not talking about being happy all the time or faking optimism. I'm referring to a genuine ability to find enjoyment in the everyday, to create lightness without forcing it, to laugh at one's own flaws without self-pity. This kind of joy has a fascinating neurological effect on the male brain. It activates the same areas stimulated by natural rewards, creating what neuroscientists call positive conditioning. A man begins to associate that woman's presence with pleasant, emotional states, not because she manipulates him, but through natural emotional resonance. But I've seen something even deeper. Unmasked joy is only possible when there is peace with one's own story. A woman who has processed her past, who has integrated her wounds without turning them into her identity, who can talk about her life without victimizing or glorifying herself, radiates a calmness that is felt, sensed, breathed. And it is profoundly soothing to a man seeking emotional stability. Let me share something that completely changed how I understand mature attraction. A few years ago, a patient told me something I've never forgotten. She said, "I stopped worrying about whether he liked me," and she started focusing on whether she liked herself. In that one sentence lies one of the deepest truths about the psychology of attraction. When a woman stops being in constant performance mode and starts evaluating whether the man in front of her deserves her time and energy, an energetic shift happens. The man stops evaluating her and starts wanting to prove his own worth. This reversal of dynamics is incredibly powerful because it aligns with very deep psychological principles. The third element that generates authentic psychological arousal is communication from the emotional center. I've listened to thousands of hours of couple conversations, and I can immediately tell when a woman is speaking from her center versus speaking from her anxiety. The difference is noticeable, not just in what she says, but in the rhythm, the tone, the pauses. When a woman communicates from her emotional center, every word carries specific weight. There's no rush to convince, no urgency to impress, no fear of being misunderstood. There is a calm confidence that what she has to say is worth hearing. This kind of communication creates a very particular response in a man, the sense that he's in the presence of someone truly worth listening to. Centered communication also includes the ability to listen without an agenda. Most people listen in order to respond, give advice, or prove that they understand. A woman who has developed genuine emotional presence listens in order to understand, to be present, to create connection. This quality of listening is extraordinarily rare and thus extraordinarily valuable. I've noticed that men describe conversations with these women using words like deep, meaningful, different. Not because they talk about complex topics, but because the quality of presence they bring to the conversation transforms it. A discussion about something as simple as the weather can become a moment of genuine connection when real presence is there. This brings us to a crucial insight I've observed throughout decades of therapeutic work. Mature men are not psychologically aroused by women who need to be rescued, entertained, or constantly validated. They are drawn to women who have developed what I call emotional sovereignty. Emotional sovereignty is not cold independence. It is the ability to manage your own emotional state without outsourcing it to someone else. It's being able to feel sadness without blaming, frustration without attacking, joy without needing the other person to validate it by feeling the same. This sovereignty creates a fascinating paradox. The more emotionally self-sufficient a woman is, the more desirable she becomes. Neurologically, this has a clear explanation. The male brain interprets emotional sovereignty as a signal of high genetic quality and relational stability. On an unconscious level, it perceives that this woman won't create unnecessary drama, won't stir up conflict over unresolved emotional needs, and won't turn the relationship into an emotional battlefield. But emotional sovereignty shows up in very concrete ways that many women overlook. One of the most powerful is the ability to have deep conversations without turning them into therapy sessions. I've seen extraordinary women lose a man's interest because they confused emotional intimacy with emotional dumping. Authentic emotional intimacy is built gradually, with measured revelations, with vulnerabilities shared at the right time, with a depth that invites reciprocity rather than overwhelming with one-sided intensity. A mature man is drawn to a woman with whom he can build intimacy, not one who demands instant emotional closeness. I remember a patient who came to my practice devastated because men kept pulling away after just a few dates. As we explored her behavior patterns, we discovered that she had a tendency to share her entire traumatic life story by the second date. Not because she was manipulative, but because she had confused vulnerability with intimacy. True vulnerability is magnetic, but only when it matches the level of established trust. Sharing too much too soon doesn't show authenticity. It shows a lack of emotional boundaries. And emotional boundaries are essential for maintaining lasting psychological attraction. This brings me to the fourth element I've identified, the ability to create what I call sustained curiosity. I've observed that women who maintain a man's psychological arousal over time are those who remain a partial enigma, not because they're playing games or being artificially mysterious, but because they are constantly growing, evolving, and discovering new parts of themselves. Sustained curiosity is fueled by genuine individuality. A woman who maintains her own interests, develops her own perspectives, and has independent experiences becomes a constant source of novelty. She isn't predictable, not because she's chaotic, but because she's alive, in motion, and in a continuous process of self-discovery. I've noticed that men describe this phenomenon in very similar ways. She always surprises me. I never know exactly what she's going to say. She sees things in a unique way. This controlled unpredictability is deeply stimulating to the male brain, which is wired to solve problems and detect patterns. The fundamental difference between authentic mystery and manufactured mystery lies in their origin. The former is born from inner richness, the latter from strategy. Authentic mystery is the natural result of a woman who has layers, who has depth, who has areas of her life and personality that are revealed gradually. Manufactured mystery is just the calculated withholding of information. A crucial part of sustained curiosity is what I call inner life richness. A woman who reads, reflects, holds formed opinions on a variety of topics, who can engage in conversations about art, philosophy, politics, or any area that genuinely interests her, becomes an intellectually stimulating partner. But there is a fifth element I consider fundamental: the ability to create what I call emotional refuge without therapy. I've seen relationships fail because women confused the role of a partner with the role of a therapist. A man needs to be able to express his vulnerabilities without feeling like he's in a therapy session. True emotional refuge is created through presence, not interpretation, through empathetic listening, not unsolicited advice, through unconditional acceptance, not attempts to fix or improve. When a man finds a woman who can be present with his imperfections without trying to change them, something deep within his attachment system is activated. This capacity for emotional refuge is directly tied to a woman's emotional maturity. An emotionally mature woman does not feel responsible for fixing her partner's problems, does not interpret his emotional states as personal attacks, and does not need him to always be at his best to feel safe in the relationship. A few years ago, I worked with a couple where the man shared something deeply revealing. He said, "With her, I can be human. I don't have to be perfect. I don't always have to be strong. I don't have to protect her from my difficult moments. I can just be me." The ability to let the other person be fully human is extraordinarily rare and profoundly valuable. And this leads us to a key distinction: the difference between emotional support and emotional fusion. Emotional support maintains healthy boundaries, respects the other's autonomy, and offers presence without losing one's identity. Emotional fusion, on the other hand, breeds codependency, relational anxiety, and eventually unconscious rejection. I've observed that men feel deeply drawn to women who can be close without merging, who can offer companionship without intrusion, who can love without losing themselves. This ability to love from a place of personal integrity is magnetic because it's rare, and what is rare, once again, becomes valuable. The sixth element I've identified is the ability to maintain what I call emotional erotic tension. I don't mean manipulation or psychological games. I mean the capacity to maintain a space of mystery, to avoid revealing everything immediately, to dose intimacy in such a way that there's always something left to discover. This emotional erotic tension is preserved when a woman has her own life, when she isn't constantly available, when she maintains private and individual spaces. It's not calculated coldness, it's personal wholeness, which naturally creates desire and anticipation. Over the years, I've noticed that relationships that lose excitement quickly are those where one partner, often the woman, becomes entirely transparent and available from the start. Total transparency kills mystery. Without mystery, curiosity fades, and with it, psychological arousal. Emotional erotic tension is also tied to what psychologists call intermittent reinforcement. When a woman is always available, always predictable, always giving the same response, the male brain adapts. But when there's variation, moments of closeness mixed with personal space, neurological activation is maintained. A key concept I've developed through my work is what I call selective availability. A magnetic woman is not equally available to everyone. She has standards, she has criteria, she consciously chooses where and with whom she invests her time and emotional energy. This selective availability is not arrogance or disdain, it's self-respect. It's the understanding that your time, your attention, and your emotional energy are valuable resources that should be offered deliberately. A mature man respects and is attracted to a woman who values herself enough not to make herself indiscriminately available. But there is a seventh element that I consider the most powerful of all, the ability to generate what I call mutual inspiration. I've observed that the most successful couples are those where both partners inspire each other to become better versions of themselves, not through demands or criticism, but through personal example. A woman who lives her own life with passion, who pursues her dreams with determination, who treats herself with respect and kindness, automatically inspires a man to raise his own standards, not out of competition but through emotional contagion. Personal excellence is magnetic because it is rare. This mutual inspiration is based on what I call reciprocal admiration. When a woman has cultivated admirable qualities, she doesn't just attract admiration, she also feels admiration for her partner. And this dynamic of mutual admiration is the most powerful fuel for sustained psychological attraction. I've seen relationships that maintain passion for decades because both people remain admirable. They keep growing, keep surprising each other, keep inspiring each other to reach higher versions of themselves. This doesn't happen by chance, it happens through conscious choice. Mutual inspiration also involves what I call parallel growth. Two people growing in the same direction while maintaining their individuality, supporting each other's personal development without losing themselves in the process. I recall a couple who came to my office after 15 years together, not because of a problem, but because they wanted to deepen their connection. What impressed me most was how each spoke about the other, not as someone predictable or fully known, but as someone still evolving, still fascinating, still worthy of admiration. The eighth element I've identified is the ability to maintain what I call emotional generosity without personal sacrifice. I've observed that the most psychologically attractive women are those who can give deeply without giving themselves away, who can be generous without becoming martyrs. This emotional generosity shows up in small things, in the ability to genuinely celebrate their partner's success, in offering support without expecting immediate reciprocity, in creating special moments without making them feel like obligations. But this only works when it comes from personal abundance, never from emotional lack. The difference is crucial. Generosity from abundance is magnetic because it's free, spontaneous, and genuine. Generosity from scarcity is manipulative as it tries to fill internal voids through the other person, and this is perceived unconsciously, leading to rejection, rather than attraction. Authentic emotional generosity also includes the ability to give space when needed, to not take distance personally, to understand that mature love includes natural rhythms of closeness and separation, which are both healthy and necessary. One essential aspect of this generosity is what I call celebration without appropriation. A magnetic woman can celebrate her partner's success without needing to take ownership of it. She can be proud of him without tying his achievements to her own value. This emotional independence is incredibly attractive. And finally, the ninth element I consider fundamental: the ability to maintain what I call conscious emotional stability. I don't mean the absence of emotions or emotional perfection. I mean the ability to feel emotions without being ruled by them. An emotionally stable woman can feel sadness without sinking into depression. She can feel anger without exploding in aggression. She can feel joy without becoming manic. This kind of conscious emotional regulation is deeply reassuring for a mature man seeking a stable relationship. Conscious emotional stability is built over years of self-knowledge, personal growth, and learning about one's own emotional patterns. It's not something that happens overnight, but it may be the most valuable investment a woman can make in herself if she is seeking a mature and lasting relationship. For decades, I've observed that men may initially be attracted to emotional intensity, but they build lasting relationships with emotional stability. Emotional intensity is like sugar. It gives a quick burst of energy, but it doesn't sustain. Emotional stability is like protein. It provides long-lasting nourishment. Stability also means the ability to maintain perspective during conflict, to avoid dramatizing everyday situations, and to distinguish between what truly matters and what's simply an annoyance. This emotional maturity creates a safe and predictable relational environment. A concept I've developed to describe this is what I call a calming presence. A woman who has achieved genuine emotional stability radiates a calm that is contagious. Her presence doesn't create anxiety, doesn't stir up drama, doesn't add turbulence to a man's life. On the contrary, it brings serenity and balance. This calming presence is especially valuable for men with stressful jobs, complex family responsibilities, or demanding public lives. Coming home to a space of emotional peace is extraordinarily valuable and therefore extraordinarily attractive. But emotional stability doesn't mean the absence of passion or intensity. It means having the ability to choose when and how to express emotions in ways that are constructive for the relationship, rather than destructive. All of these elements are not techniques you apply externally. They are qualities that are developed internally through a deep process of self-discovery and personal growth. They cannot be faked because they come from real transformations of personality and character. True psychological arousal in a man isn't triggered through manipulation. It's triggered by becoming a woman who is genuinely attractive. And a genuinely attractive woman isn't perfect. She is authentic. She's not invulnerable. She's courageous. She's not coldly independent. She is warmly sovereign. Over the years, I've noticed that women who cultivate these qualities not only attract higher quality men, but also feel more fulfilled within themselves. The work of personal development that leads to authentic attraction also leads to personal fulfillment. There is a direct correlation between the level of a woman's personal growth and the quality of the men she attracts, not because she's chasing better men, but because her own evolution makes her magnetic to people who have also done the inner work. Through my decades of practice, I've observed that the most successful relationships are formed between people who have reached similar levels of emotional maturity, not necessarily in terms of external achievements, but in terms of inner development, self-awareness, and the capacity to love in a mature way. After all these years of supporting people in their personal growth and relationships, I've reached a conclusion that might seem paradoxical. The woman who most deeply excites a mature man is the one who least needs to excite him. She has built a life so full, so rich, so satisfying that a man feels privileged to be invited into it. This personal abundance isn't selfishness, it's maturity. It's not coldness, it's security. It's not manipulation, it's authenticity. And in a world where most people live from emotional lack, personal abundance becomes naturally magnetic. Personal abundance shows up in many ways, in the ability to enjoy one's own company, in having independent goals and dreams, in maintaining meaningful friendships, in cultivating personal talents and skills. A woman who lives from a place of abundance doesn't need a relationship to feel complete, but she can deeply enrich one when she chooses it. In the end, true psychological arousal isn't something you do, it's something you are. It's not a strategy you apply, it's a way of life you build. And this way of life, rooted in self-knowledge, self-acceptance and continuous growth, doesn't just attract mature men, it transforms them, inspires them, invites them to become better versions of themselves. And that perhaps is the true magic of mature love. It's not about finding someone to complete you. It's about becoming someone who inspires others to complete themselves. When two complete people meet, they don't merge. They amplify each other, creating something greater than the sum of their parts. This kind of mutual transformation is the natural result when two people have done the inner work needed to truly love themselves. Because only when we have learned to truly love ourselves can we offer authentic love to another human being.